Good morning, everyone. How are you doing today? Can you all hear me well? Good morning. I hope you're all having a wonderful Tuesday. Can everybody hear me well? Good. All right. Today we're going to be talking about agency. Now, agency is in the top 3 categories with the largest number of questions on your exam. So it is imperative that you know and understand the agency information. Agency is one of the easiest parts of all. It is also one of the most misunderstood because it is so easy that people automatically want to add extra information to it. So keep it very simple, keep it very concise. You will also have a lot of agency questions that are scenario based. Make sure that you're going back and watching my techniques on how to evaluate the real estate questions webinar so you can learn how to take those scenario questions and really dissect them apart so you can figure out what they are asking you on the exam. Sure, the interior design certification, the CHMS, Certified Home Marketing Specialist, that is marthawebb.com. So marthawebb.com. Good morning, Mark Rodriguez in Texas. That's where I am as well. Pearl says, how do I get the techniques video? Just go to your previous webinars and type in techniques and you'll see it right there. No, you're not allowed to write on the exam itself. They typically will give you scratch paper or a whiteboard. Unless you're testing at home. In some states where you're testing at home, they don't allow that, and then some do. So it's a state by state, a different rule for that. Zortea passed the exam yesterday. Congratulations to you. Everybody send RJ Zortea some congratulations. That's wonderful news. Yeah. Good morning to all of you also who are joining us for the very first time. We're so glad to have you here today. If you're joining us for the first time, you'll note that in every webinar that I have a suitcase of real estate topics so that you can have a better chance to remember the information, to recall it on the licensing exam. Now go ahead and get your pen and paper ready. Let's do a vocabulary list that goes right along with the agency part. What is going to be in your agency suitcase. That way, when you're finished, you can take those vocabulary terms that go with agency. You can store them directly in that agency suitcase. Okay. If you're joining us for the first time, or maybe you have been a member of PrepAgent for a while, and maybe you haven't used all the different learning tools. So there are a lot of different learning tools that you can use. We understand at PrepAgent that everyone has a different brain style. The webinars, you can go back, you can watch these over and over again. If you're a premium member, audio lessons, maybe you're out taking a walk and you want to listen to the audio lesson. Maybe you like to read, so the exam prep ebook is wonderful. Joe's famous all over the world for those videos he has. He makes it so easy for you to remember the information. The vocabulary worksheet, we tell you vocabulary is everything. And again, we're taking that a step further today. We're doing vocabulary by topic so you can remember the agency information. Flashcards, and then your practice exams. An assignment for you today when we are finished with this webinar. Go in and do an agency exam specific to agency with 25 questions. Where it says 100 questions, you can always change that to whatever number of questions you would like to do. So I would change that to 25. If the question does not look relevant to what has been in my webinar today, then just fast forward to the next question because it is a huge database of questions. Rochelle says the videos are a lifesaver. Yes, for so many people. Joe has such a gift of helping people remember. Yeah. Sierra says she's utilized all these different learning tools and they've been helpful. So some of you will enjoy using all of them. Some of you will find that you have a favorite, but they're all right there for you to use. Of course, if you need extra help, Stu and I both do tutoring, so you can sign up at PrepAgent for tutoring. I will put a whole study plan together for you. If you've taken the test before, I will also go in, I will evaluate your score sheet, and I will come up with a study plan based on that, so you have every chance to do much better on your licensing exam. So if I can help you in that way, you just be sure and let me know, and I'm happy to do so. So let's talk about agency. The first thing on your vocabulary list, let's write down agency. So agency is any relationship in which one party acts for or represents another under the authority of the latter. So your agency relationships need to be in writing. Your buyer representation agreements, your listing agreements, your property management agreements, those would all be examples of agency relationships. The relationships are between the broker and the client. The broker and the client. Rhonda says, I was right about the 25 questions. I'm glad that was helpful. Some students don't realize they can change that number of questions, so they try to always do 100, and that can be exhausting. All right, let's move on to the next. We have 3 employment agreements in real estate. Again, I mentioned that previously. It's the employment agreement between the broker and the client. That's your buyer representation agreement, your listing agreement, and your property management agreement. Now, you've heard about Sarah before. She picked up my business card at Starbucks and she wants to see a house. I do not know Sarah. She gives me a call and she says, would you meet me at this house and show it to me? It is not my listing. She just has my business card and my phone number and she wants to see a house. First of all, please, please, please do not meet strangers at a house. Agents get hurt because they meet strangers at a house. It's not safe. I have a webinar at PrepAgent called Safety. I want you to stay safe in this industry. There is no amount of money worth you jeopardizing your safety. So do not meet a stranger at a house. Also, I need to know if Sarah has any money. I have no idea if she has any money. I need to know that. She's got to have money in order to buy that house. I make a poor choice that day and I say, sure, Sarah, I'll be right there. Sarah is going to be my customer. So write on your vocabulary list, customer. I owe Sarah no fiduciary duties if she is a customer. The only thing I have to do is I have to treat her fairly. I have to be honest. I have to have integrity. I have to disclose all material defects I know about the property, and I have to account for the money. So no commingling. Commingling is where you're putting somebody else's money in your account. Conversion is where you're spending it. So that's all I owe to Sarah. Because if Sarah is my customer, it automatically defaults, and it's a crazy way they wrote the rule, it automatically defaults that I am a sub-agent of the seller. So if Sarah's my customer, I'm a sub-agent of the seller. I don't even know that seller. It's kind of like being a substitute school teacher for the day. I'm the other teacher for the day. Well, here I am, the other agent for the seller, the sub-agent for the seller. I don't even know the seller, but I really owe more to the seller that I don't know than I owe to Sarah who called me. Like I said, don't try to figure the rule out. Just know that that's what it is, because the more you think about it, the more confusing it will become. So if Sarah's my customer, I just owe her honesty, integrity, disclosure, and I have to account for the money. I have to treat everybody fairly all the time, but no fiduciary duty is required. Let's go ahead and put fiduciary on our vocabulary list. Fiduciary just means trust. That means it will be a trust-based relationship. And again, if a customer, no fiduciary duty is required. Now, I want to turn Sarah into a client. Another name for client is principal. So let's put that on your list, client and principal. In order to turn Sarah into a client or a principal, I want to create buyer agency. I do that with the buyer representation agreement. So let's also put buyer agency and buyer representation agreement on your vocabulary list. So that's how I turn Sarah into being my client. I create buyer agency by having her enter into that buyer representation agreement. Now, if I want to create seller agency, let's put that on our list of vocabulary terms. I use the listing agreement. You have 4 different listing agreements that I want you to put on your vocabulary list. The open, the exclusive agency, the exclusive right to sell, and the net listing. Those are your 4 listing agreements. That's how you create seller agency. In the open listing, the seller can list with multiple brokers, and if the seller sells the property himself or herself, they do not have to pay a commission. On this one, you would have to be the procuring cause. Let's add procuring cause to our list of vocabulary. That's the agent who takes it from start to finish. So in order for the broker to be paid a commission on that, they would have to have taken that from start to finish. Your second one is called exclusive agency. In the exclusive agency, the seller can list with only one broker. And if the seller sells the property himself or herself, they do not have to pay a commission. Your third one is the one that you're going to be using all the time. That's the exclusive right to sell. And that one, the seller can only list with one broker. But if the seller were to sell the property himself or herself, they still have to pay a commission no matter what. On this one, you do not have to be the procuring cause because you're going to get paid that commission anyway. Now, my students come back and they say, okay, I'm confused on exclusive agency and exclusive right to sell. Maybe that applies to one of you today because they both begin with exclusive. How do we tell those apart? And I'll tell you the silly little way that I remember. Remember, an exclusive right to sell, the seller has to pay a commission no matter what. That has more words in it than exclusive agency. So I remember you have the ability to make more money in exclusive right to sell because they have to pay a commission no matter what. So that's how I remember it. I hope that will help you to remember the difference on those. Yeah, that is very common to get those two confused. The last one is the net listing. Some states don't even allow the net listing, and then those that do allow it, a lot of times most of the time it's rarely used. It has an ethical problem with it. We're always supposed to look out for our client's best interest first. In the net listing, it makes it very easy for the agent to look out or the broker to look out for their own best interest. I tell the seller my opinion of the market value of your property. It is worth $500,000. The seller says, but I only want to net $50,000. The rest of that will be the broker's commission. Wow. $450,000 commission. Now you can see where we could get into some ethical issues with this. So this one has a lot of problems with it. It could also technically go the other way where the seller wanted to net so much money that they ended up not netting anything as far as the broker. So these are your 4 listing agreements: open, exclusive agency, exclusive right to sell, and the net listing. So I need you to remember on these, how many brokers can the seller list with, and does the seller have to pay a commission? And that should help you considerably in answering any questions on this. Rochelle, the open listing is where the seller can list with multiple brokers, and if the seller sells the property themselves, they do not have to pay a commission. Oh, Connie, I don't know in Ohio. You'd have to go into your state material to see if the net listing is allowed. Some states allow it, some don't. All right. Everybody have all 4 of those added to their vocabulary list? I owe fiduciary duties to my client, to my buyer client, to my seller client. We already added fiduciary to our vocabulary list. We said that that is a trust-based relationship. Luna says, is the open and exclusive almost the same? Except for, remember, in open, they can list with multiple brokers. In exclusive agency, they can only list with one broker. That's your difference. So your fiduciary obligations that you owe to your client, I remember that by the acronym OLD CAR. OLD CAR. So put OLD CAR on your vocabulary list. OLD CAR stands for obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. I'm going to be obedient to Sarah. Sarah is approved for $500,000, and she said she only wants to spend $300,000 on a property. I will be obedient to her. I will show her $300,000 properties. I will be loyal to Sarah. That means that I'm always going to put her best interest first, never my own. I will disclose all material defects that I know about the property. I will keep everything confidential. I will handle all accounting carefully. No commingling, no conversion. Let's put commingling and conversion on your vocabulary list as well. Remember, commingling was putting somebody else's money in your account. Conversion, spending that money. And then I'll take reasonable care of Sarah. I will know what I'm doing. I'll know the laws. I'll know the rules of real estate so I can take reasonable care of Sarah. Make yourself a note that when agency terminates, loyalty terminates. So loyalty terminates when agency terminates. Confidentiality, however, goes on forever and ever. Last year, I had a listing. The seller decided to take it off of the market, so they terminated the listing agreement. When that listing agreement was terminated, loyalty was terminated as well. Now, this year, the seller has listed the property with another broker, and now I have the buyer. So now I'm loyal to my new buyer that I have that's interested in buying that property I previously had listed. Totally confusing, right? So my loyalty is to the buyer. However, I still owe confidentiality to that seller because I had their property listed last year. I know how much the seller owes on the property. I know if we had any previous offers while I had that property listed and how much they were for and what the seller thought about those. I have to keep all of that confidential forever and ever, even though I have the buyer now. I do have to disclose all material defects. So always, always disclose, disclose, disclose. So remember, loyalty terminates when agency terminates. However, confidentiality never terminates. It goes on forever and ever and ever. So OLD CAR, make sure you have all that written down. Dual agency. So dual agency is where the broker has the buyer and the seller. It requires written permission. There is a lot of liability with it. On the national type questions on your exam, they will ask you about dual agency. Some of your state-specific agency questions, double check what your state is doing on agency, or on dual agency, because some still do dual agency. Other states have redefined it, renamed it. Like in Texas where I am, we don't call it dual agency anymore. But on the national type question, they will ask you what dual agency. And then on a state type question on your exam, you'll want to know how your state is approaching dual agency. Did they rename it? Did they redefine it? Now, some of you are saying state, national, what does that mean? Some of your exams, depends on which state you're in, are all in one exam. It will be a combination of state and national type questions all mixed into one test. Other states, they have it in 2 exams. You'll have a national portion, and you'll still hear me okay? Can everybody still hear me okay? Okay. I just got a notice on my computer that the YouTube program just disconnected itself. Everybody hear me okay? All right. Let's talk about termination of agency. It should be back again. Can you all hear me now? It cut out for a second. It was the YouTube program, so I don't know. It must be having some type of difficulty. Am I back now? Good, good. All right, the slides may be a little bit blurry, but I'll read them to you. I don't know. The program must be having some type of issue today. It probably has something to do with YouTube. Sometimes it has some little glitches, but for the most part, it works great. Termination of agency, the expiration of the buyer representation agreement or the listing agreement. I got my job done. I sold Sarah a house, or I sold the seller's home. There was some type of legal issue. The property went into bankruptcy, and the judge says, I'm ordering it not to be sold right now. Or maybe the property was condemned, or it was foreclosed on. The property was destroyed. There was a hurricane, a fire, a tornado, an earthquake. The broker passed away. The principal died. Now remember, if you got that same question under contracts, you're in the midst of a sales contract, the principal dies, it does not terminate the sales contract. The heirs can carry out and conclude it. However, if you're in an agency type question and they're asking you what happens if the principal dies, it terminates the agency agreement. Mutual agreement, the seller called and said, I was being transferred. My transfer did not go through. So I want to take my house off the market. And I say, okay, those things happen. So we'll go ahead and we will terminate that agency agreement. We have mutual agreement. Maybe the principal is not doing their job. The showing system calls them to set up appointments for buyers to go look at the house, and they turn down every appointment, or the ones that they have allowed. The house is not show ready. The bed is not made. There are dirty dishes in the sink. The broker's not doing their job every single time that Sarah wants to go and take a look at a house. She calls to make an appointment and no one calls her back. No one is available to go show her a house. So maybe the broker isn't doing their job. So if the principal or broker are not doing their job, that may be grounds to be able to terminate that agency relationship. Yeah, Amanda, if the house has a severe fire and it's super damaged, then chances are that's going to terminate the agency agreement if it's been a severe fire. And does the agency agreement terminate as well as the contract? In the contract, that can get a little bit state specific. There are times when the contract may have something in it about if insurance proceeds could be accepted or whatever, but for the most part, yes, it would in most situations terminate that. All right, let's talk about agency lesson B. Agency lesson B. That is going to be universal, general, and special agency. So universal agency is the broadest of all. The broadest of all. Let's say that your seller went out of the country and said, okay, I am not going to have access to a computer. So, Mr. Agent, I am going to give you power of attorney so that you can sign on my behalf. Your title, if you were given power of attorney, would be attorney in fact. So if you see a universal agency question, be looking for power of attorney and attorney in fact. General agency, that is going to be a property manager. So if you see a general agency question, be looking for property manager. What that means is, and I'll tell you another example of general agency, it is the relationship between the broker and the agent who has their license under that broker. The broker owns all of the business, so it is the broker's responsibility to be managing all that business. And the way that the sales agent gets to factor into that is that through the general agency relationship, they're carrying out the business of that broker. Take that same kind of theory, put it over there with property manager, and that's typically the example that they will give you on the exam would be a property manager. So general agency and property manager go together. The third one is special agency. This is the most limited of all. This is the relationship between the broker and the client. Your buyer representation agreement, your listing agreement, those create special agency relationships. So that's universal, general, and special. Okay, let me check your chat. Marilla says, can I get a definition for a listing agreement? Yes, Marilla, that is the employment agreement between the broker and the seller. Let's see. A licensee signed an exclusive agency agreement. The principal went to an open house and purchased through another agency. Is the licensee still entitled to a commission? Can you, let's see, SIM, Simrias OM8811, send me a little bit more information on that question. You can email me, Cynthia at PrepAgent.com. Connie says, so if agency terminated due to death of the principal, but there was a contract to sell, so agency terminates, but the contract does not. Yeah, it's kind of confusing, but that's technically the way it is. The agency agreement does terminate, but the contract can go on because the heirs can carry out and conclude it. I really wouldn't think in any more detail than that, just knowing what the rule is, because you want to keep this very simple, very concise, or it will get quite confusing on the licensing exam. Yeah, special agency, that's just the relationship between the broker and the client. Your buyer representation agreement, your listing agreement, those create special agency relationships. I remember that one by thinking, well, out of all of the licensees out there, out of all the brokers out there, you were the one chosen to represent that buyer or seller. That's very special. So that's kind of how I remember that. Sometimes just some little simple way like that will kind of trigger your memory when you're taking the exam. That's right, Magda, you got it correct. Yeah. Oh, congratulations, Cowley. Passed the exam in Michigan. Outstanding. Good job. James Tursky, your buyer agreement is the relationship between the broker and the buyer. Yeah. Valerie, the example for general agency is going to be the property manager. Yeah, I'm just double checking your chat. Nicole, I did not see your question. I apologize. It scrolls by very quickly, so if I did not answer you, I did not see it. You can email to me at Cynthia at PrepAgent.com. Cowley says, thank you, PrepAgent's the best. Well, that's very nice. We appreciate that compliment, and we at PrepAgent think that you students are the best. So yes, I count it quite an honor to get to teach all of you amazing students. All right. Let's double check our vocabulary list. This is not a complete list that I've got up here on the screen, but let me just read to you what I have on my vocabulary list for agency. Let me double check that you have all of these terms as well. I have agency, customer, fiduciary, client, principal, buyer agency, buyer representation agreement, seller agency, open listing, exclusive agency, exclusive right to sell, net listing, procuring cause, commingling, conversion, old car, universal, general, and special. Does everybody have all of those vocabulary terms? And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a quiz here. Oh, thank you, James Tursky, for reminding. I always forget. I'm supposed to ask you to like the webinar because it helps us on YouTube, and I always forget. So if you don't mind doing that, I am most appreciative. I am most appreciative. Thank you for reminding of that, James. I appreciate that very much. Okay. I'm watching your chat. If I just met Sarah at that house and I didn't have her sign anything, I knew it was a poor choice to just meet her there, but I did it anyway. Who is Sarah? What is she? Is she my customer or is she my client? Is she my customer or my client? That's right. Perfect. Absolutely. If she is my customer, I am a blank of the seller. Like that substitute school teacher, I'm the blank of the seller. There you go, Katrina, outstanding. Look at all you smart students. I'm the sub-agent of the seller. That's exactly right. I owe more to that seller that I don't even know than I do to Sarah who called me. Crazy way they wrote that rule. What do I use? What document do I use to turn Sarah into a client? I want to create buyer agency. What document do I use for that? Pearl, I'm in Texas. Send me an email. Send me an email with your questions, Cynthia at PrepAgent.com. That's right. There you go. Your buyer representation agreement. Outstanding. Now, what do I use to create seller agency? What do I use? What's the overall term for that? What do I use to create seller agency? There you go. Boy, Patrina, she's got all these right away. The listing agreement. Yes, I think Patrina's been first on every one of them. Good job, Patrina. Now, we have 4 different listing agreements. Who can name all the listing agreements? Who can name all 4 of the listing agreements? I'll help you. It starts with open. There we go. Open, exclusive agency, exclusive right to sell, and net. So your 4 listing agreements, your open, your exclusive agency, your exclusive right to sell, and your net. Which of those 4 can the seller only list with one broker, but the seller does not have to pay a commission if they sell it themselves? So they can only list with one broker, but seller does not have to pay a commission if they sell it themselves. Which one is that? Which of those 4? That's right. The exclusive agency. Great job. Exclusive agency. Yes. Which is the one that the seller can list with multiple brokers and does not have to pay a commission if they sell it themselves? Seller can list with multiple brokers, but does not have to pay a commission if they sell it themselves. There you go. That open. Yes, perfect. Perfect. Which is the one that you're going to use most often, where the seller can only list with multiple brokers. I'm sorry, let me start that over. The seller can only list with one broker, I should have said. So the seller can, this is the one you'll use most often. The seller can only list with one broker. And if the seller sells the property themselves, they still have to pay a commission. Which one is that? There you go. Exclusive right to sell. Yes. Which is the one that has the ethical problem? Which one has an ethical issue? The net. Yep. Absolutely. You did a great job on those. You didn't even hear the question and you knew the answer. So the chat has a little bit of a delay to it. So anyway, yeah. Oh, you knew those well. Who can tell me what old car stands for? What does old car stand for? Yeah, exclusive agency, they can only list with one broker, Nikki. And if the seller sells the property themselves, they do not have to pay a commission. So what does old car stand for? Y'all are still talking listing agreements. Yeah, you're right. Oh, Monica, that's right. So your fiduciary duties based on trust. There we go. Alden. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. Which of those terminates when agency terminates? Which of your fiduciary duties terminates when agency terminates? There it is. Patrina's got it again. Boy, Patrina, you have answered every one of these correct. Loyalty, yes. Which one goes on forever and ever and ever? Which one goes on forever and ever? There you go, Jane. Perfect. Confidentiality. Confidentiality goes on forever and ever and ever. Okay. Now remember, figure out which of the learning tools work the best for you. It may be a combination of all. It may be just one of them that works the best for you. Remember, you can go back and you can watch this webinar over and over again. I would recommend that you do so because we go over a lot of information very quickly. Remember that I do everything on a PowerPoint slide, so you have all the PowerPoint slides there to take notes with. Luna, the selling broker, this is the one representing the buyer. That's ultra confusing because they are selling that property to the buyer. Yeah, people get that confused all the time. I want you to go in and like I said, take a practice exam today, and then just an example of agency and how it ties into our different learning tools. There's special agent under the vocabulary, dual agency, general agency under the vocabulary. The flashcards are great. There's the exclusive right to sell, exclusive agency, the definition of an agent, a customer. There's some information from the ebook. You can see how agency starts on page 28 in the ebook. The practice exams. Don't forget to go in and watch my techniques on how to evaluate the test questions so you can learn how to go in and practice dissecting those questions apart, trying to figure out what they are asking you in those questions so you can get it right on the licensing exam. There's one on dual agency. There's duty of fair and honest dealing. All right. Well, I hope you learned a lot about agency today. Amanda's testing tomorrow. Remember, Amanda, that this is in the top 3 categories with the largest number of questions. So make sure you understand the agency part. Be sure not to overthink it. Keep your learning very simple. Keep it very concise. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Tomorrow, I believe Joe will be here with you for a webinar, and then Thursday and Friday, Stu will be teaching you. And I always count it such an honor to get to teach all of you. And I look forward to Monday and Tuesday of next week. I'll be back presenting you with more webinars. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.